This is Let's Talk Football here on the sportshacks.com, and as always, we're joined by Daryl Geraghty, a regular reporter on the League of Ireland circuit. And Daryl joins us to look ahead to this weekend's games. Daryl, your own game on Friday night is going to be at Dalymount Park, Bohemians against Drogheda United. A big weekend for both teams last weekend. Bohs, of course, going to Dundalk and getting what was a very much needed win, the first in 10 games, if memory serves me right. And Alan Reynolds will be happy with that. And Drogheda, of course, can take heart because they've had a couple of results have gone against them. Unluckily, in some cases, they've had some results have gone their way, luckily. But to beat Derry at any stage of the season is always a good result. So, two teams in good form going into Friday, you'd have to say, at Dalymount.
Yeah, full of confidence, absolutely. Like we keep mentioning on other podcasts, we'll be keeping an eye on Bo's attacking selection, and Rennie's team selection as well, because the likes of Diallo was left out of the squad and comes back and was kind of a game changer last week. And the young attackers, which he keeps referring to, are going to be inconsistent. So that's probably why one will score 1 week, one will be out, and one these keep rotating the goals between them, which can be frustrating for fans. I can understand that. And on the Drogheda side, they seem to be the bogey side for Bows. I think it was Bows only beaten one in the last 7, maybe at last count. And they're coming off the back of like you said, a proper Kevin Doherty performance. The 1-0, the penalty, grinded out, looked good on the break, and used the pace like the Drogheda of last season. So it's all set up to be a cracker. It really is. Look forward to it.
Do you think there'll be many goals in, as you say, like Kevin seems to be a manager who likes the 1-0 to the Arsenal type approach to games? So, I mean, will he be smiling if his team wins 1-0, or would he be a bit nervous if it gets to sort of 2-2 or 3-2 or whatever during the game?
Yeah, I think he preferred the 1-0. Now, he probably won't thank me for saying that. If I was speaking to him on Friday, probably hit me a clip around the ear. But yeah, I think he preferred the clean sheets and build on that and go then. Like you said in the last pod when they beat Shells 3-2, he was animated, he was up the walls, didn't know who to blame, and had to keep saying to us how happy he was, really. So yeah, I think back to normal. Service resumed last week with the 1-0, so we take that every day of the week.
And Alan Reynolds will be very happy to have gone to Dundalk, because Dundalk have been surprise packets, I suppose, in many ways, but they've done really well under young Kilduff. And as a manager, he's a young man. I know he's not as young as some of his players, for example, but he is a young manager. So they'll have been happy to go to Dundalk and get those 3 points. But again, Dalymount, it can be difficult if the game doesn't go their way. They need to stamp their authority early this time, don't they?
They do, yeah. They seem to be leaning towards a second half team for some reason, and whether that's the strength of Ball's bench that turns the momentum in their favour. But some of the halftime abuse that Rennie has been getting in recent weeks is, it's getting over the top now, where like you see it online every week, they want them out. So yeah, it'd be imperative for him to start fast, try get the first goal and keep the momentum from early, instead of letting the crowd build up the tension and the frustration. Getting to half time, then he makes 3 subs and switches again. So yeah, imperative, quick start, get stuck in them straight away.
And obviously the 3 points will make such a difference for that. 3 points as well last weekend for St. Pat's. They have Shells now. This is the next biggest game for Shells, if you know what I mean. Every game now seems to be a big game for Shells.
Yeah, they're there's no getting away from that. They're under pressure. Their expectations at the start of the season were through the roof, and deservedly so with the squad they had put together. Just it's not clicking at home, but you could kind of see there's an excitement in Joey last week with the fact that it might be away from home, and he said the game takes on a life of its own, which probably good for them to focus on just the one thing instead of looking at tables, looking at form. If we lose this, are we getting pulled down towards Sligo Rovers? And so yeah, this is going to be massive for them. Probably game of the week. And obviously for Pat's side of things, they're that attacking talent they have is scary when it clicks as well. So it's all set up for another.
I've a good friend who's a Pats fan, and he's starting to talk about glory days, and we're back to the glory days at Richmond, and we're back to the Super Saints, and we're back to we're going to win the league, and we're going to do well in Europe, and one step at a time, lads.
That's it. It's just been a good start. They've had chances to stretch the leads at the top. and they haven't done it, and they have been inconsistent with random draws when you expect them to win. So, yeah, just temper the expectations a little bit, I'd say.
They do look the best equipped to give Shamrock Rovers trouble at the top of the table, simply because they can score goals.
Yeah, the goals can come from anywhere across the front. Keane Levy's hitting another level, I think, this season. Seems to be a bit more consistent. Having Zach Albazetti's back is like can be the best winger in the league with Michael Duffy on his day. Again, it just seems to be a common theme with Pats is his fitness issues. There always seems to be a couple injured, or they're a couple away from, you know, going on that steady run. It reminds me of Spurs for some reason. They just always seem to have some sort of injury crisis. But yeah, like you said, the attacking talent is ridiculous. So
And Keane Levy, you've mentioned him already. I mean, he's the consistency has been key for him and a run of the team. And on his day, he's a lovely, lovely creative footballer. He just sees things.
he does, yeah. And that low center of gravity is hard to stop. You can see this calls for him already to be protected a bit more because if he, what can you do? You have to hack him down because any bit of space he gets, he can either dribble past two or three, or he can play a pass, like you said, like he showed last week. So, I mean, super talent, and I could see why Stephen Bradley was talking him up in terms of international recognition as well.
Stephen Kenny.
Stephen Kenny, yeah, Stephen Bradley. Another slip of the tongue there.
And he was talking about Joe Redmond as well, because Joe, Joe's a real captain, isn't he? He's a proper footballer's captain.
He is, yeah, he's a natural leader as well, and Homer's been mentioning that since he came in to take the
Mm.
job. Where I think the phrase he used to the media was, "He's looking for a bastard," basically, and
Mm.
you can't have enough leaders in the dressing room. I don't think, especially for a country the size of us. And again, speaking of consistency, like just himself and Pico Lopez probably been the two most consistent defenders in over the last how many years. So yeah,
And only
absolutely.
and only one of them is going to the World Cup at this moment in time. So we'll talk about that again another day. But speaking of
Yeah.
Pico and Shamrock Rovers, I mean, you can't see anybody stopping them, can you? You can. Dundalk are next up in Oriel. They're going to have to bounce back after what happened at home to Bows. But for Kieran Kilduff, it's a big game to try and turn it around again, isn't it?
It is, yeah, it's huge, and I thought he made a good point actually, mentioning the centre back partnerships where I think he's like in the teens of how many times he's had to change or use different combinations. And now for a promoted team, it's not ideal. So what they've done is just makes that even more impressive. And then looking at Shamrock Rovers players, like whoever he puts up front for Gordon Noonan, it's and then the
So
backup cast it's
it's
tough. So you
yeah.
can't really see them keeping them out for the 90 minutes, unfortunately.
You just
But
look at
it
you,
happens.
you look at those Rovers that Rovers attack, and you just see goals.
You do. Yeah, it's almost impossible to stop. Can like Pats are trying to do. It's coming from every angle.
Mm.
And the Rovers players being there, done that, have the medal. So yeah, maybe Dundalk will be stubborn on the night, but it's hard to see them stopping them for 90 plus minutes.
Waterford, we discussed them yesterday. Winless Waterford, we're still calling them because that's what they are. But they're at home to Derry. Home advantage, first home game for Graham Coughlin as manager. Derry City probably reeling a bit after last week's defeat. Still no sign of James McLean coming back as he's getting over that injury. But I can't see Waterford winning this. Can you?
No, I think, like we say, we keep calling them winless, and I don't know where it's going to come from on recent examples and their performances. You're kind of hoping that dressing down they got after last week from the manager
Mm.
has kind of woken a few of them up, maybe just to say, look, yeah, that's it. We're not going to be doing this style of football. This is what we're going to be. Derry have been inconsistent as well, and away from home, not great. But yeah, to beat Derry, and I can't see it. But I think they could be stubborn now and well drilled after what Coughlin seems to be eyeing up the squad. He wants to how he
And
wants that squad to perform. So
And to be fair to him, he's used to survival battles. He's been through that mill, as they say in England. What's interesting, I think, as well, is going to be how Fleetwood react now, the owners of the club, because, as you said already, the transfer window will open in the summer. If this weather ever changes, we can call it summer. But the transfer window will open, and will they give him money now, or will they give him players? Will they loan him players, etc.? It's how they respond now is going to be interesting, isn't it, as owners?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think they mentioned recently how they've lost a couple of million again this season. So they could be looking at that side of things to go, is it really worth having the sister club? But in terms of Coughlin, you think he'd have those connections to more rough and ready players who are used to the battle, not having to go 40 odd games like they do in the lower leagues in England, just a half a season to grind out results, make them hard to beat. But I think they might back him because it's a shortened season and it's not starting from fresh at the first game of the season. So I'd say he'll be backed and he'll use his contacts really well.
And of course, that you would have to assume that he had some conversation with him about what happens in the summer when he did take the job. The fact that he's taken the job would suggest there is going to be support from there. I can't see him having taken the job knowing that it's going to be a sinking ship with no support whatsoever. So we will keep an eye on that. Finally, Daryl, Ireland are going to play Grenada, whatever we're going to call them, on Saturday in Murcia. The squad is going to be announced on Monday then for the games against Qatar and Canada at the end of the season in England, so to speak. Heimer Hallgrimsson, he has talked about giving opportunities to League of Ireland players. He didn't want to bring them in for this game because of the league still ongoing. The league is going to go into a break. A lot of League of Ireland fans, and particularly managers, and particularly I suspect Stephen Bradley, are going to want to see some of these League of Ireland players, and we've spoken about them a lot here, but some of these young League of Ireland players in that squad. Suggestion seems to be that Victor is going to end up with the 21s rather than the seniors. But
Yeah.
will we see any League of Ireland player, do you think, in the senior squad?
I think they're eyeing the League of Ireland players for maybe the Canada game because the
Mm.
Qatar game is just outside the international window.
Mm.
And I do agree, kind of thinking about it since last week, that it doesn't really reflect great on the league if players are going during the league while it's on to go on. I know it's represented their country and they're coming from such a smaller league here. But yeah, it just no other league really would kind of think that's not really great, is it? We're kind of second fiddle, third fiddle even. So, but yeah, I think maybe the Canada game. I know Dawson again is always mentioned, and I don't think he can get in quick enough to show what he can do. And another was surprising was Connor Brand, goalkeeper.
The Cork City goalkeeper, yeah.
Yeah, the Cork City goalkeeper. So he was mentioned as well. And I'm sure between now and the Canada game, Stephen Bradley and Stephen Kenny, I got them the right way around. So they'll be again on the PR front, and the campaign will kick off this Friday. So to get even more players involved. So
Conor Brand, I saw the suggestion by Gavin Cooney on the 42 that he's going to be in the provisional squad. Provisional squads, by their nature, tend to be very big. By the way, there's no
yeah,
guarantee if you're in a provisional squad you're going to get all the way down. But interesting that a player from the first division in the League of Ireland is in contention. I mean, we've talked about recognition for Shamrock Rovers players, for St Patrick's Athletic players, for Bohemians players who are playing in the top division. But a goalkeeper, I suppose it doesn't matter where a goalkeeper plays if they're a good goalkeeper. But it is interesting that they would look at the first division.
absolutely. Yeah, it just goes to show that they're keeping an eye on everything. So I mean, it's good recognition for the league if you're in the Premier Division or the First Division to know that you're being watched everywhere. I think the prime example was maybe Colin McCarthy at UCD went over to Hull. Anytime you talk to him, he's still kind of baffled by how it happened himself. It doesn't make sense. He was playing First Division and just got a call basically. So yeah, I was surprised with Connor, not just because of the First Division. I thought we had enough cover, maybe goalkeeping wise, but yeah, I mean, it just goes to show. Maybe it's a wake up call for both divisions to say, look, take your game
Like,
serious, take your
yeah,
football serious, because
yeah,
the eyes are on you. So
yeah.
yeah,
And you would never begrudge any player an international cap. And I think Dawson Devoy, we spoke about him, we spoke about Victor. But let's see if they're in the conversation come Monday. And if Victor's with the 21s, again, that's a step up because he hasn't been in a 21 squad as yet. But he'll be joining Michael Noonan, and you would think Adam Brennan, etc. Adam Brennan was, of
yeah,
course, on standby for the seniors, as was Matt Healy. in the recent past as well. So we will be interested to see how they do on Saturday against Granada, and we will be interested to see that squad when it's announced first thing on Monday morning. And Darrell, I've no doubt we'll talk about it next week here on Let's Talk Football. So thank you for your time as always, and here's to another exciting weekend in the League of Ireland.
Thank you. Look forward to speaking next week.